My brother called me the disgrace of the family and cut off all contact. 10 years later, he came to me for help, but I had a surprise for him. Hi everyone. Before we dive into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and exciting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now, let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. My name is Maya Cross. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how my brother's words, "You're the disgrace of the family," became the starting point of a journey that turned me from a family outcast into a successful entrepreneur and a person who managed to save not only herself, but her entire family. You know that feeling when your phone buzzes with a number you haven't seen in 10 years? That sick drop in your stomach, like you're falling through the floor of your own life? That's exactly what hit me last Tuesday when I saw Marcus flash across my screen. My older brother, the golden child, the one who called me the disgrace of the family, the last time we spoke and meant every poisonous word. I almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail like I'd fantasized about for a decade. But curiosity, that fatal flaw that's gotten me into and out of more trouble than I care to admit, made me swipe green. Maya? His voice was smaller than I remembered, desperate. Maya, please don't hang up. I should have. God, I should have hung up right then and saved myself the emotional whiplash of the past week. But instead, I found myself saying, "Hello, Marcus." And just like that, 10 years of carefully constructed walls came tumbling down. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood, because context matters here. My family was one of those picture-perfect suburban dynasties that looked flawless from the outside, big house in the right neighborhood, successful parents, 2 kids who were supposed to follow the predetermined script. Marcus was born to play the lead role, 3 years older than me, quarterback of the high school team, honor roll student, early acceptance to Princeton with a full scholarship. He had Dad's confident smile and Mom's sharp intellect, plus this effortless charisma that made everyone gravitate toward him. Teachers loved him. Coaches loved him. Hell, even the family dog seemed to prefer him. Then there was me, the understudy who never quite learned her lines. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't stupid. My grades were decent, I had friends. I could hold my own in most situations. But next to Marcus, I might as well have been invisible. Every parent-teacher conference was a comparison. Every family dinner was a subtle reminder of how I was falling short of the standard he'd set. Marcus got into the National Honor Society in his sophomore year, Mom would say, not even trying to hide the disappointment when I brought home my report card. "Your brother never talked back to us like this," Dad would add whenever I showed the slightest bit of attitude. The worst part? Marcus seemed to genuinely believe he was better than me. Not in that typical sibling rivalry way. This was deeper. He looked at me like I was a project that had gone wrong, a rough draft of what a Chen kid should be. I remember one particular incident when I was 15. I'd been working for months on this short story for a national writing contest. It was about a girl who discovers she can speak to plant silly, maybe, but I'd poured my heart into it. I was so proud when I made it to the state finals. Marcus was home from Princeton for winter break, holding court at the dinner table with stories about his internship at some prestigious law firm. When I tried to share my news about the contest, he actually laughed. "That's cute, Maya, playing with your little stories while the rest of us are building real careers." Mom and Dad chuckled along, and something inside me just broke. Not dramatically, it was quieter than that. Like a thread snapping that you don't notice until the whole tapestry starts unraveling. I never wrote fiction again. Not for years. The real explosion happened during my senior year of high school. Marcus was home for Thanksgiving, fresh off landing some hotshot job at a Wall Street investment firm. 22 years old and already pulling in more money than most people see in a lifetime. Meanwhile, I was struggling. My grades had slipped to junior year after a bad breakup, and some experimenting with substances that weren't exactly parent-approved. Nothing too serious, just the kind of stupid mistakes teenagers make when they're trying to figure out who they are. But in our house, anything less than perfection was tantamount to failure. The fight started over something ridiculous. I'd forgotten to take the garbage out, I think. But it escalated fast, the way family fights do when they're really about 10,000 other things. "I'm so tired of your excuses," Mom said, her voice sharp with frustration. "Marcus never gave us this kind of trouble." "Because Marcus is perfect, right?" I shot back. "Marcus can do no wrong." "At least Marcus has direction," Dad chimed in. "At least he's making something of himself." That's when Marcus decided to deliver the killing blow. He was sitting at the kitchen island, still in his expensive suit from his flight, looking at me with this expression of pure disdain. "Face it, Maya," he said, his voice calm and cutting. "You're the disgrace of the family. We all know it. You know it. The sooner you accept it, the sooner you can stop dragging the rest of us down." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad didn't contradict him, didn't tell him he'd gone too far. They just looked at me with this mixture of disappointment and resignation that confirmed everything I'd always suspected about my place in their world. I was 18 and absolutely gutted, but I was also too proud to cry in front of them, too proud to beg for scraps of affection I'd never really received anyway. "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "If that's how you feel, then I guess we're done here." I went upstairs, packed a bag, and left that night. Crashed on my best friend Jess's couch for a few weeks while I figured out my next move. I'd saved up some money from my part-time job, and I had a plan. Maybe not the kind of plan my parents would approve of, but a plan nonetheless. I never graduated from high school in the traditional sense. Got my GED instead, then spent 6 months backpacking through Europe on a shoestring budget, trying to figure out who Maya Chen was when she wasn't constantly being measured against her perfect brother. The next few years were a blur of false starts and small victories. I waited tables in Portland, taught English in Thailand, worked as a camp counselor in Colorado. I was searching for something, purpose, identity, maybe just proof that I wasn't the worthless screw-up my family thought I was. It was during my stint as a camp counselor that I rediscovered my love of storytelling. These kids, ages 8 to 12, would gather around the fire every night begging for stories. Not the sanitized Disney versions. They wanted real stories, with real emotions and real stakes. So I started making them up. Tales about brave kids who saved their towns from mysterious creatures, about ordinary people who discovered extraordinary powers, about underdogs who proved everyone wrong. The kids ate it up, and for the first time since that writing contest in high school, I felt that spark again. I started writing seriously when I turned 22. Not fiction, I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I wrote about my travels, my experiences, the strange and beautiful people I'd met along the way. I started a blog called Postcards from Nowhere, documenting my adventures with a mix of humor and raw honesty that seemed to resonate with people. The blog grew slowly at first, then faster. A few thousand readers became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Brands started reaching out for partnerships. Publishers started calling. My first book, The Art of Getting Lost, came out when I was 25. It was a collection of essays about travel, family, identity, and the courage it takes to disappoint people. The subtitle was A Guide to Finding Yourself When Everyone Else Thinks You're Already Lost. It hit the New York Times bestseller list in its 3rd week. Success is a funny thing. When you've spent most of your life being told you're not good enough, suddenly having people pay attention to your words feels almost surreal, like you're waiting for someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake." But I didn't let imposter syndrome hold me back. If anything, those years of being underestimated had taught me to work harder, push further, and never take anything for granted. The book deal led to speaking engagements. Speaking engagements led to consulting opportunities. Consulting led to me starting my own company, a content creation agency that specialized in authentic storytelling for brands that wanted to connect with Millennial and Gen Z audiences. I called it Black Sheep Media because I've always had a sense of humor about my family role. The company exploded. We went from 3 employees in a cramped office in Austin to over 100 people across 5 cities. We landed clients like Nike, Spotify, and Netflix. Our campaigns won awards. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured on magazine covers, profiled in Forbes as one of their 30 under 30. By the time I turned 28, I was worth more money than I'd ever dreamed possible. Not just comfortable, actually wealthy. I bought a beautiful house in the hills outside Austin, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that went on forever. I traveled first class, donated to causes I cared about, and employed dozens of people who seemed to genuinely love working for me. And through it all, my family had no idea. I'd changed my name professionally, Maya Cross instead of Maya Chen. It wasn't that hard to stay off their radar, especially since they'd made it clear they wanted nothing to do with me. I'd built an entirely new life, with new friends, new colleagues, new family. My employees, my chosen family of creatives and misfits who understood what it meant to bet on yourself when no one else would. Sometimes I'd Google Marcus, just to see what he was up to, still at the investment firm, still climbing the ladder, still looking like the perfect son in family photos I'd occasionally stumble across on Mom's Facebook page. They looked happy without me. Complete. Good for them. Which brings us back to last Tuesday and that phone call that changed everything. Maya, please don't hang up. I was in my office looking out at the Austin skyline when Marcus's voice transported me right back to that kitchen where he'd called me a disgrace. For a moment, I was 18 again, hurt and angry and desperate to prove him wrong. What do you want, Marcus? I kept my voice neutral, professional. I need to see you. I know I don't have the right to ask, and I know how I left things between us, but I'm in trouble, real trouble, and I don't have anywhere else to turn. There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Vulnerability, maybe even fear. Marcus had always been so sure of himself, so confident in his place in the world. This version of him sounded broken. What kind of trouble? Not over the phone. Please, Maya. I'm in Austin on business. Can we meet? Just for coffee. Give me 1 hour, and if you never want to see me again after that, I'll respect it. Austin. He was in my city. Probably had no idea it was my city. The irony wasn't lost on me. I should have said no. Should have hung up and gone back to my meeting with the Netflix executives who were waiting in my conference room. But that same curiosity that had gotten me into trouble my whole life made the decision for me. Okay. 1 hour. There's a coffee shop called Radio on Barton Springs Road. Meet me there at 7 tonight. Thank you, Maya. Really, I know I don't deserve... 7 o'clock, Marcus. Don't be late. I hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I walked back to my conference room, where some of the most powerful people in entertainment were waiting to hear my pitch for their next documentary series. Just another day at the office. Radio Coffee was one of my favorite spots in Austin, eclectic, artsy, the kind of place where tech entrepreneurs sat next to struggling musicians, and everyone was working on something they believed would change the world. I got there early and claimed a table in the back corner, where I could see the door but stay relatively hidden. I barely recognized him when he walked in. The Marcus I remembered had been tall, confident, immaculately dressed. This Marcus looked diminished. His suit was expensive but wrinkled, like he'd been sleeping in it. His hair, once perfectly styled, was disheveled. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He spotted me after scanning the room twice, and the relief on his face was almost painful to watch. He hurried over, nearly knocking over a hipster's laptop in his haste. Maya, God, you look. He paused, taking in my appearance. I dressed carefully for this meeting. Not too fancy, but definitely successful. Understated jewelry, designer jeans, a cashmere sweater that cost more than most people's monthly rent. You look great. Thank you. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. Tell me what's going on. He sat heavily, like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. For a moment, he just stared at his hands. I fucked up, Maya. I fucked up so badly, and I don't know how to fix it. This was new territory. Marcus admitting failure, Marcus asking for help. I leaned back in my chair and waited for him to continue. The company I worked for, there was some illegal stuff happening. Trading on insider information, manipulating stock prices, the whole 9 yards. I wasn't directly involved, but I knew about it. Should have reported it, should have walked away, but the money was too good and I was too scared of losing everything I'd worked for. He looked up at me, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. The SEC caught on about 6 months ago. They've been building a case, and now they're offering deals to anyone willing to testify against the higher-ups. The thing is, if I cooperate, I'll probably avoid jail time, but I'll be blacklisted from the entire financial industry. If I don't cooperate, jail time. 5 to 10 years, minimum. And even if I somehow beat the charges, I'm done. No one will ever hire me again. My reputation is destroyed. My savings are frozen pending the investigation, and I can't even afford a decent lawyer. I sipped my coffee and studied my brother's face. A part of me, the 18-year-old part that still carried the sting of his words, wanted to feel satisfaction. This was karma, wasn't it? The golden child had finally fallen from grace. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the choices he'd made. Sad for the family that had put so much pressure on both of us to be perfect. Sad for the relationship we might have had if things had been different. I'm sorry to hear that, Marcus. I really am. But I'm not sure what you think I can do to help. I need money. The words came out in a rush, like he'd been building up the courage to say them. For legal fees, to get by until this whole thing is resolved. Mom and Dad already mortgaged the house to help me, but it's not enough. I know we haven't talked in 10 years. I know I said things that were unforgivable, but you're the only other person I have. I set down my coffee cup carefully. How much money are we talking about? 200,000. Maybe more, depending on how long this drags out. I nodded slowly. $200,000. 10 years ago, that would have been an impossible sum, more money than I could imagine having. Now, it was what I spent on my car. That's a lot of money, Marcus. I know it is. But I'm desperate. I'll pay you back, I swear, with interest, whatever you want. And what makes you think I have that kind of money? He looked confused for a moment. I assumed? I mean, you're working, right? Maybe you have savings, or you could get a loan. This was the moment I'd been waiting for without even knowing it. The moment when the power dynamic between us finally, irrevocably shifted. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen, my banking app, with a balance that made his eyes widen. Actually, Marcus, I do have that kind of money. I have significantly more than that kind of money. He stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. How is that? What do you do? I run a company, a very successful company that I built from nothing over the past 10 years. We're valued at about $50 million now, and I own controlling interest. The color drained from his face. 50 million. Give or take. The valuations change pretty regularly. I put my phone away. You seem surprised. I had no idea. We all thought. I mean, when you left, we figured you'd just, fail? End up exactly as pathetic as you predicted? He winced. Maya, about what I said that night. Oh, we're definitely going to talk about that. But first, let me tell you a story about the disgrace of the family. For the next 30 minutes, I told Marcus everything. About the years of wandering, the slow build of my career, the company that had grown beyond my wildest dreams. I told him about the book deals, the speaking engagements, the awards and recognition. I told him about my team of brilliant, creative people who believed in the power of authentic storytelling. I told him about my house, my travels, my charitable foundation that helped young people from difficult family situations find their path. I watched his face change as the reality sunk in. His little sister. The disappointment, the black sheep, the disgrace had built an empire while he was climbing someone else's corporate ladder. Maya, I don't know what to say. I'm incredibly proud of you. What you've accomplished is amazing. Are you proud of me, Marcus? Or are you just saying that because you need something from me? He flinched like I'd slapped him. That's fair. I deserve that. You called me a disgrace. You told me I was dragging the family down. You cut me out of your life so completely that you didn't even know I'd become successful. So, forgive me if I'm a little skeptical of your sudden pride in my accomplishments. You're right. I was horrible to you. We all were. The way we treated you, the constant comparisons, the pressure. It wasn't fair. I can see that now. Can you? Or is this just convenient remorse because you need my help? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup like it held the answers to all of life's questions. Both, he said finally. If I'm being honest, it's both. I probably wouldn't have reached out if I wasn't desperate. But sitting here now, seeing what you've become, I genuinely regret how things ended between us. I regret a lot of things. I appreciated the honesty, even if it stung. Tell me about Mom and Dad. How are they handling all this? They're devastated. Dad's talking about coming out of retirement to help with legal costs. Mom started working again for the first time in 20 years. They're scared, Maya. We all are. A part of me softened at that. Whatever our issues, I didn't want to see my parents suffer. They'd made mistakes, but they'd also sacrificed a lot for what they thought was best for their children. And what do they think about you reaching out to me? Marcus looked uncomfortable. They don't know. They think they think you're probably struggling somewhere, maybe waitressing or something. They have no idea you're successful. Because you never bothered to check. Because we assumed the worst. Because we wrote you off when you didn't follow the path we thought you should take. Because we were arrogant and short-sighted and probably a little scared that you might prove us wrong. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from him before. So, what happens now? I asked. Let's say I give you the money. What then? Do you go back to pretending I don't exist? Do you tell Mom and Dad where the money came from, or do we all just pretend this conversation never happened? I don't know, he admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. I've been so focused on just surviving this crisis that I haven't considered what comes after. Well, I have conditions. His head snapped up. Conditions? If I'm going to help you, and I'm not saying I will yet, it won't be anonymous. Mom and Dad get to know exactly who bailed out their golden child. They get to know that their disgrace of a daughter is the one with the resources to solve this problem. Maya, furthermore, if I do this, we're going to have a real conversation about our family, about the damage that was done, about the way you all treated me, about what it would take to actually repair these relationships. This isn't just a financial transaction. If you want my help, you're going to have to confront some uncomfortable truths. He nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. And one more thing. I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eyes. I need to hear you say it. I need to hear you admit that you were wrong about me, that calling me a disgrace was cruel and unfair and based on your own insecurities rather than any real assessment of my character or potential. The silence stretched between us. I could see him struggling, his pride warring with his desperation. Finally, he spoke. I was wrong about you. Completely, utterly wrong. You weren't a disgrace. You were just different. You didn't fit the mold we'd created. And instead of celebrating that, we punished you for it. I punished you for it. I was threatened by your creativity, your independence, your willingness to take risks. It was easier to tear you down than to examine my own insecurities. His voice broke slightly on the last words, and I saw tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so fucking sorry for what I said to you, and for what I put you through, and for missing out on 10 years of your life, because I was too proud to admit I was wrong. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in 10 years, I saw my brother, not the golden child, not the successful investment banker, but the flawed, frightened human being underneath it all. I'll give you the money, I said quietly. His relief was immediate and overwhelming. Maya, thank you. I can't tell you what this means. I'm not finished. I held up a hand to stop him. I'll give you the money, but not as a loan. It's a gift. No interest, no repayment plan, no strings attached financially. I don't understand. The strings are emotional, not financial. If I do this, we're going to rebuild our relationship. All of us. You, me, Mom, Dad. We're going to have difficult conversations. We're going to confront the past, and we're going to figure out how to be a family again. If you're not ready for that, if you just want a quick financial fix so you can go back to your life and pretend this never happened, then walk away now. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. I could see him weighing his options, calculating the costs and benefits. What if Mom and Dad don't want a relationship with you? What if they're too proud to accept help from someone they wrote off? Then that's their choice. But you'll tell them the truth about where the money came from, and you'll make it clear that the offer for reconciliation is on the table if they want it. What they do with that information is up to them. And if they reject it, if they'd rather lose the house than accept help from you, I shrugged. Then I'll know where I stand, won't I? At least there won't be any ambiguity. He nodded slowly. Okay, yes. I want to try to fix this, Maya. I want my sister back. Even if your sister is more successful than you, even if she doesn't fit the image you had of who she was supposed to be, especially then. I've spent 10 years thinking I was better than you, and it turns out I was wrong about everything. Maybe it's time I learned something from the disgrace of the family. Despite everything, I smiled at that. Don't call me that anymore. What should I call you? How about just Maya? Or if you're feeling fancy, you could try my incredibly successful little sister. He laughed. Actually laughed for the first time since he'd walked into the coffee shop. I think I can manage that. The wire transfer went through the next morning. $250,000, which turned out to be enough to cover Marcus's legal fees and get him through the transition period while he figured out his next career move. True to his word, he told our parents where the money came from. The phone call I got from Mom 3 days later was one of the most surreal conversations of my life. Maya, is it really true what Marcus told us? Which part, Mom? All of it. The company, the money, the success. Is it really all true? It's all true. A long pause. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from her before, small, uncertain, ashamed, I owe you an apology. We all do. Yes, you do. Would you be willing to talk? Maybe we could visit you, or you could come home, or... Austin is my home now, Mom. But yes, you're welcome to visit. You're all welcome to visit. They came the following month. All three of them, looking awkward and out of place in my modern, successful life. We spent a weekend talking through 10 years of hurt and misunderstanding. There were tears, arguments, moments of real breakthrough, and moments where it felt like we might never bridge the gap. But we kept trying, and slowly, carefully, we started to rebuild something that felt like a family. Marcus decided not to testify against his former colleagues. Instead, he took the plea deal, paid his fines, and accepted a 5-year ban from the financial industry. It was a humbling experience for someone who'd built his entire identity around his career success, but it also freed him to explore other options. He's working with me now, actually. Turns out he has a talent for the business side of content creation, and his financial background has been invaluable as we've expanded into new markets. It's strange, having my older brother report to me, but we're both adjusting. More importantly, we're friends now. Real friends. Maybe for the first time in our lives. Last week we were having dinner at my house, a monthly tradition we've established with our parents. Dad was telling a story about his new consulting work, Mom was showing us photos from her book club retreat, and Marcus was explaining his latest project managing partnerships for Black Sheep Media. At some point during the evening, Mom looked around the table and said, "I'm so proud of both my children. You've both overcome so much and built such meaningful lives. Both children." Marcus raised an eyebrow. I thought Maya was the disgrace of the family. The table went quiet. It's still a sensitive topic, even after all this time. Maya was never a disgrace, Mom said firmly. She was just brave enough to disappoint us in order to find herself. That takes more courage than any of us gave her credit for. Damn right it does, Dad added. Your sister saved our family, in more ways than one. I looked around at their faces, these people who had hurt me so deeply, who had written me off and counted me out, who were now sitting in my house eating food I'd paid for and celebrating accomplishments they'd never thought I was capable of. 10 years ago, I was 18 and heartbroken, convinced that I was everything they said I was, a failure, a disappointment, a disgrace. Now I'm 28 and successful beyond my wildest dreams, surrounded by people who love and respect me for exactly who I am. The best revenge really is living well. But the sweetest justice is watching the people who underestimated you realize they were wrong and having them be genuinely happy about it. You know what the funny thing is? I said, raising my wine glass. I actually am grateful that Marcus called me a disgrace that night. Maya, Marcus started to protest. No, hear me out. If you hadn't said that, if you hadn't pushed me to leave, I might never have found out who I really was. I might have spent my whole life trying to live up to your expectations instead of creating my own. So, in a weird way, being the disgrace of the family was the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus smiled, a real smile, not the polite mask he used to wear. Leave it to you to find the silver lining in family trauma. That's what I do, I said. I tell stories, and this one has a pretty good ending. We raised our glasses together, and for the first time in over a decade, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Sometimes the black sheep turns out to be the one who saves the whole flock. Sometimes the disgrace becomes the family's greatest pride. Sometimes the story you think you're living turns out to be just the prologue to something much better. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very stubborn and very willing to prove everyone wrong, the last laugh really is the sweetest one of all.